Good everyone. Mm,
Good
So,
afternoon,
discussing the uh, intrusion detection system and some of the sections of it, which included host-based IDS, was already discussed. So, we began with the network intrusion detection system. So, when we were talking about network intrusion detection system, I told you that. There are sensors which can be deployed into the networks that helps you to identify any intrusion if it has occurred into the network or not. So the drawback with the host-based IDS was that the identification of the intrusion and then a preventive measure followed by the detection will always take place once there has been an intrusion into the system. So, possibly the intrusion has occurred and the effect of that intrusion has already uh, affected the system. And once it is done, then at the later stage, you are able to identify whether the intrusion has occurred into the system or not. Now, to eradicate that problem or to come up with a proper solution which prevents you from such situation, we moved on to NIDS. So in case of NIDS, it was assumed that whenever the NIDS would be effective, it would always generate the intrusion event in a real-time scenario. So you'll be able to identify whether there is a possible intrusion taking place or trying to happen onto your system. You would trigger the process and stop the incoming packets there itself. So, I told you that there are two sensors which are deployed in the network. One is the inline sensors or the active sensors, and then the other one is a passive sensor. So, so normally the inline sensors which are there are those which are inserted into the components of the network, or you can say that they inserted into a network segment. Now, what is the need of introducing it into the segment? First thing is that you could have added a proper device which would have made as the inline sensor. So if you add one more component and then you add your router, so the processing process would happen at twice these stages. So that is why it is done that whatever networking device, whether it is switch or whether it is router, is present between the two devices or is present inside the network, you would use that underlying hardware and add on the sensors into it. Okay, so the concept of inline sensor normally is that you'll insert it into the network segment so that whatever traffic is flowing through that particular component, you would monitor it and then the decision would take place, or your sensor would take the collect the data and then for the analysis would happen. Now there are other ways as well in which you can combine the inline sensors. So one case I told you that you can use it with router or you can use it with switch. The other case can be that when there are firewalls installed into your system, you can use those firewalls as your base for introducing sensors. Okay, so instead of having an additional hardware into an NIDS system, when you're using an inline sensor, you can use those inline sensors with the existing functionalities which are present into your network. Okay, now when you're using it in a uh, proper dedicated device, then it would be referred as a standalone inline NIDS sensor. Fine. Now, when you have deployed an inline sensor into a particular device, what would it do? It would perform both the detection and the prevention. So, since we said that it is performing a real time analysis, whatever data comes at the inline sensors location, it would first be checked whether it would first be collected, then analyzed at that very instant, and then if it is found that the rules according to which the packets which are arriving are not there, it would drop the packets. Okay. The other case which is there is referred as a passive sensor. So normally the passive sensor monitors a copy of the network traffic. Okay. So what is the need of having a passive sensor now? Because we said that the inline sensors are part of your network segment, and it would only allow those packets which are according to the routes present at that inline sensors location. So technically, we wanted a real-time analysis, but here also, yes, there would be a next to real-time analysis, but there would be some extra delay which would be introduced in processing the packets, both at the routers level and as well as at the sensors level. So to come up with a better solution, yes, the inline sensor was able to handle the solution, but only drawback was that there was an extra delay introduced. Okay, so then came the concept of passive sensors. Here, what is happening? Uh, at a particular device, when the traffic comes in, what would be done is that here the device is the networking device, not the individual nodes. Okay, so when the packet is dedicated to a particular node, or when an entire traffic is dedicated to a particular node, what would be done? There would be two copies of the data created. Okay, one copy would be used at the sensor level itself to identify whether the traffic is belonging to an intruder or not. Parallelly, the traffic would be forwarded to the desired device. Okay, so the time taken of processing that traffic at the sensor level would be much lesser than the time taken for the traffic to reach at the destination, or there can be slight variation also. So the delay which was introduced when we were using only the inline sensors was much higher in comparison to the delay which might be introduced in the passive sensors. Okay, so we are trying to reduce the delay of delivery of the information at the node. Clear? Now, what is the notion behind it? That the passive sensor which is introduced would be processing the received traffic to identify the intrusion. इतनी ही देर में हम बाकी का डेटा भेज देंगे. तो अगर कुछ डेटा पैरेलली जो रिसीव हुआ है एंड पर, it can be received, and if the passive sensor finds that the sent traffic or the copied traffic which और the traffic जिसको आप monitor कर रहे हो does contain some of the malicious component, and it would inform the device, or it would inform the attached networking devices to stop forwarding those packets to the device and immediately preempt that service of forwarding the packets. Okay, so the advantage which was offered is that the packets are delivered without introduction of an additional delay. But if the packets which are delivered are not up to the mark, it would be dropped at that very. So पूरा जो traffic होगा, malicious traffic will not be entirely delivered to the destination. Okay, so normally the passive sensor over here monitor a copy of the network traffic, and you're not actually passing the actual traffic through the device. Okay, now the only case when we talk about that the passive sensors are very effective than the inline sensor is because you do not have any extra hardware which is required for handling the uh, traffic. Also, we are not introducing any extra packet delay. Clear? Any doubt?
Yes, ma'am. No.
So how is this entire thing of forwarding the packet facilitated? Normally, what happens is that you have certain devices, let's say you have tap introduced. I guess everybody knows what is tap. Okay, so what happens is you are sending the entire network traffic on this link. Okay, now when this entire network traffic is sent, you have certain connections like this, referred as taps, where the bifurcation of the data happens. Okay, so you could have your NIDS sensors located here. Also, since we are talking about passive sensors, what did I say that these are the, let's say, host presence for which the traffic is destined to. And once the packet which is sent or the traffic which is sent from this particular node, what did we say that the copy of the data is sent to the NIDS sensor. So let's say this is the NIDS sensor, which is actually a passive sensor. Okay, so your passive sensor would monitor the copy of the data. How are you sending the copy of the data? The copy is facilitated by introducing a tab, and the packets can be forwarded here as well as it can be forwarded over here. Okay, now when we're talking about the in the tab, now will you have a proper address associated to this tab, or will you have a proper address associated to this sensor? Address of this will be there, or address of this tab will be there? Anybody?
Then the address will be of the host itself. No change in the address.
At what end will it be there for tab, or you're talking about NIDS sensor?
Ma'am, at the tap.
You will have an IP address according to you.
Yeah, ma'am, the IP address of the host will be there on the tap, and when we take the data, we take it as it is. We do not change the address.
Okay. Anybody else? There would be some or the other device present at the tab which is collecting the data ना, तभी तो आप उसको forward कर रहे हो सेंसर की तरफ. So when any networking device is present onto the entire network, it has to be identified uniquely with the help of an ID. I'll not say that IP address it needs to be there. There needs to be some specific identification which helps you to identify it. Will you require it in case of tap or not? I'm only asking this.
No, ma'am, I don't think so.
Anybody else? Nidhi, Ujjwal, why? Why don't you have IP address associated to tap? Find out the
Ma'am, I,
answer. Ah, yes.
ma'am, I think, ma'am, we have to require it, ma'am, because it has to access the data that is flowing.
Okay.
Ma'am, like in bus topology, ma'am, the tab does not have a specific IP address. That's why I'm saying it does not require the
Yes,
IP address
the
itself.
answer is that it will not have a specific IP address. Okay, tell me why it is not having any IP address. Even though your tap is collecting the data, it would forward the collected data to the NIDS sensor, and whatever device is there onto the network, it would be uniquely identified. But tap here will not have a IP address associated. You'll have an NIC for tap.
No, ma'am.
You will have an NIC for tap.
Ma'am, but if we have an IC, then we have to have a
It's not
address. It's
necessary.
really MAC address.
It's not necessary. You'll have an
Okay.
NIC, but the NIC for this tab usually does not have an IP address associated to it. Okay, so find out the answer for this. That why will you not have a IP address associated to this tab?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Will you have NIC for your sensor, NIDS sensor?
Yes, ma'am, I think so because it is accepting the data.
NIC, you'll have a proper IP address for the sensor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so whatever data is forwarded to this, it would be monitored first. If found an intrusive data, it would be communicated to the node, and then the traffic flow would be preempted. Okay, so now when we are talking about the concept of placing the NIDS sensors. Okay, so there would be multiple locations wherein you can place your NIDS sensors into the entire network. Okay, so here there are four locations mentioned. Now, see, initially everybody knows what is firewall used for. Why do you have a firewall? What is internal firewall and what is external firewall? Okay, so here let's assume that this is the first place where your NIDS sensor is located. That is at location 2. Okay, so the internet cloud which is present over here shows that this is an open internet. Okay, so from the open internet, you would have traffic originated, and that traffic would be dedicated to your organization's network. So this entire thing, can you see the mouse pointer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this entire thing, which includes server, workstation, and service network, all of this is part of your organization. Okay. So at the edge of the organization, you have external firewalls deployed. Okay. Now, one more thing which is deployed at the edge of your organization is the webmail server or the DNS server. Now, what is the reason of deploying it is there are users who are either completely part of your organization, or there are certain users who are not authorized user for your internal organization. Okay. Now, for instance, you have Google server. Okay. So there are multiple users who are accessing the Google server. So let's say this is the webmail server. This is the Gmail server, which is allowed for users who are registered on this webmail. Okay. There would also be users who are actual part of Google organization. Those users would be part of this. Okay. So We are the users who are present in this open internet. We would originate the traffic dedicated to the network of entire Google. But that traffic, if I'm using it in an authorized way and I only want the webmail to be accessed, your webmail would be part of the organization, but it will be present at the edge interface. Clear? So, first and foremost thing which I need to consider is that I would like my system to be prevented from any possible attack which is originated from the open internet and is directed to my organization. So for that case, what is done? A sensor is placed between the external firewall and between the open internet. Clear? Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What all components are there in your sensor? You have, sorry, for monitoring an intrusion, what all components are there? You have sensors and you have analyzers. Third part is not essential, which is just a user interface. Okay. Now, the sensor which is present between the external firewall and the internet, what would it do? It would filter out or it would monitor the traffic which is originated from the open internet and is directed to your network. Clear? The other thing which this sensor do is it would try to monitor the attacks which are happening into the open internet but are not directed to your organization. Clear? See, intrusion detection normally occurs on the basis of behavior, whether it is the behavior of a intruder or whether it is the behavior of a normal user, whether it is the behavior of an attack or whether it is the behavior of a zero-day attack. Okay, so these can be known attack or zero-day attack. Here we are talking about known attacks. Okay, so when you're talking about known attacks, your sensor which is placed at location 2 would obviously be aware of certain attacks जिसके बेसिस पर वो intrusion detection कर रहा होगा. Clear? So it does not need to bother about those rules or those libraries which already whose definition is already present at NIDS 2. Okay, so if there is any traffic that is based upon, let's say, DOS has arrived and is dedicated to your open internet, or sorry, dedicated to your organization, your second sensor would filter out or identify whether it's an intrusion or not, or identify that the DOS attack is trying to happen onto my system and try to preempt the traffic. Okay, so this can be done with the help of NIDS sensor too. The other thing which this sensor can help you out in, let's say there are certain zero-day attacks who have occurred into your open internet, but whose definition is not present at the sensor or whose signature is not present with the intrusion detection system. In that case, what would the sensor do? He would monitor the open internet, try to inform the network administrators that this is a possible attack which is occurring in the open internet, and we can possibly introduce signatures for those attacks so that if these attacks are launched onto my system at some later stage, I could prevent it. Okay? Any doubts till now?
No,
Okay. So this is the advantage which NIDS sensor, if placed at location number 2, is providing. Fine. What is the disadvantage with this location? The disadvantage with this location is that the traffic which is originated and is directed to this location is very high. So this sensor would require a higher processing burden than any sensor which is located in this entire organization. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's move on to the next case. Next case is having it at location 1. So this is a very common location of NIDS sensor that I'll have the sensors located inside the external firewall. Okay. What advantages will it offer? First, same thing it can consider that if any information which has occurred or the attack which has occurred here identified by 2, that same definition can be monitored by 1, and you can develop the rules even if the traffic has surpassed this location and external firewall doesn't have rules so that the traffic can be filtered out. Your NIDS sensor can trigger the events and identify it as an intrusion. Okay, that means that it is seeing the attacks which are originating from the outside world and also have penetrated the external firewall. Okay. The other thing which sensor at location 1 sees that there can be cases where your service network, which is the webmail server or the DNS server, has targeted. Okay. So these things can be monitored by the location 1. Okay. Also, if there aren't any proper network policies at the firewall level, your problems at this firewall level will be highlighted by this NIDS sensor. Clear? So talking about the incoming traffic, your incoming traffic is majorly monitored by location 1. Okay. Now obviously there can't be a case that एक ही तरफ से attack आ रहा है. You can have a possibility that the legitimate users who are part of your organization are sending in spurious packets to the open internet. Okay. So what is it saying that there can be a case that the incoming packets do not have attack or these attacks are not recognized. Okay. But the IDS present at this location 1 sometimes can also recognize the outgoing traffic. Okay, which possibly can be either from the legitimate user or from any server which has been compromised by the users which are present inside. Clear? Any doubt?
No.
Sure. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
we'll move on to the other place, which is location 3 and location 4. बताओ एक एक एडवांटेज दोनों का. लोकेशन 3 क्या ऑफर करेगा?
Ma'am, even if there's an intrusion and it crosses 2 and 1, both NIDS, and if we want to save our databases and the internal servers, then 3 can do that work because it can have the same signature updates as 2 and 1. So it will be like a third protection to the database of our server.
So we'll say that the sensor at location 3 would majorly monitor both the internal and the external attacks. Okay. Now
Yes,
the sensor at location 3 here, okay, what is it doing? It is only monitoring the subset of devices which are present at the organization. What is the subset? It is only monitoring the internal server or the traffic which is originated from internal server, also from LAN switch or router when it is passing. Okay, so The advantage is that these sensors can be tuned specifically for specific protocols. Okay, because the servers which are placed here, you have the internal server or the resource server and the workstation networks over here. So they would be used only in specific cases by the legitimate users only, or if it is used from any other user who is present outside the open internet, वो भी कुछ specific protocol के basis पर ही इनको access करेगा. So the processing burden, which was much higher at 1 and 2, would be substantially decreased at 3 and 4. But you can have a higher security constraints introduced at 3 and 4, because the devices with which, or the link onto which your NIDS sensor is placed, is used for specific communications. Okay, so here what can we say, that you can tune these NIDS to specific protocols and attack types, which might reduce the processing burden at 3 and 4. Okay, so basically the sensor present at 3 would monitor the traffic, increasing the probability of finding the attacks. Similarly, it would detect unauthorized activity by the authorized users which are present within the organization's perimeter. Clear? Same case works for location 4. It would detect multiple resources and the systems which are being targeted by the attacks. Also, what would be happening is that it would only focus upon the limited resources. So it would be much easier to identify the intrusion, and the probability of intrusion detection would also be much higher. Clear? I hope there isn't any doubt. So both the host-based system and the NIDS systems were working in conjunction. Both these host-based IDS and network-based IDS were working in conjunction, and these can be deployed onto the network. Okay, so every IDS had some or the other disadvantage. The IDS which is being provided at site 1, or the IDS which is being provided at the other two sites may or may not be same. So I'll give you a proper example what is the case. See, there's a concept known as distributed host-based IDS. Okay, so here what is done, we were talking about host-based IDS. So in a particular host, you have a system which is referred as HIDS. It would monitor the activities which are occurring into the system, or traffic which is being sent onto the system, and then classify it on the basis of certain rules. Okay, so here what is done is there are three different hosts. These are normal clients, and this is just a LAN monitor who have individual agent modules. So these agent modules are actually monitoring these individual devices. Okay, so there would be some signatures collected by these, or there would be some signatures who would be used as reference for identifying intrusion. Okay, so there are other devices also connected within the entire network. Here, the decision of classifying an intrusion or classifying a traffic as an intrusion traffic is not limited to these hosts. Okay, so the component referred as agent module over here would only collect and trigger that this is a possible case which might be referred as or might be classified as intrusion. Okay, so It would point out those things which may be classified as intrusion, send it to a central manager, where this central manager and the manager module present within it would further decide whether you have to classify the triggered event or whether you have to classify the observed traffic as a spurious traffic. Okay, so what is done here? The decision is not taken locally. Instead, the decision is taken by a central manager depending upon the traffic which is collected by all of the devices. Because there can be cases where if there is any event which is normal for a particular user, it can be said as it's a intrusion activity or an intrusive behavior for some different user or some different host, or it can be vice versa. So you need to be very specific in classifying whether this particular behavior can strictly be said as the intrusive behavior or not. Clear? So that is why you have this entire information where you have certain OS audit information. So OS audit information would be corresponding to the entire users which are part of your system. Then on those collected information or those collected audit records, there would be filter applied. So why would we filter apply? Because in every devices or in every host or in every operating system, the format of audit records differ depending upon the vendor. Okay, so let's say there are 10 parameters present in Windows 7 and there are 15 parameters present in Windows 10 operating system when you are creating a log file. Now, among those 7 and 10 parameters, there are only 5 parameters which help you to decide upon the fact that you can classify any event as an intrusion event. So in that case, the remaining 2 and remaining 5 parameters are useless. You do not need to process those information again and again and help you in deciding that the activity can be classified as an intrusive activity. So you need to filter out the redundant information or the undesired information, and there is a sample template generated which only has the essential information which helps you to decide whether it's an intrusion or not. That is referred as a host audit record. Okay, then you'll further apply certain logics on the basis of the templates associated with those logics and forward the information to the agent protocol machine. Now, in the collected data or in the collected audit record, what would the user be looking for? He would try to identify these 4 activities. If found, if there is any notable activity, so notable activity can be based on threshold or there is a slight increase in power on or power off. So these are certain activities which are very abnormal activities referred as notable. There are other activities as well. You can read it and go through it. If there are signatures, so let's say there is variation in the normal user's behavior and it is slightly resembling to the attacker's behavior or the attack's behavior. So that is also referred as a triggering case or identification that this is some deviation from the expected behavior. So all of these activities would be identified into the collected and filtered out audit record, and it would be notified to the agent protocol machine. Now, I already said that the decision of classifying that activity as an intrusive activity is not done by the agent protocol machine. Instead, what would it do? It would trigger and send the information to the central manager, notifying it as an alert, and the decision would be taken by the central manager. Now, before taking the decision, central manager may use as reference the information collected by HAR or the information which is filtered out. Okay, so that he identifies or he gets the knowledge of the fact that the agent protocol machine or the templates which are used are not compromised. Okay, so there is a cross referencing to the collected data as well, and then the final decision would be taken place. So if there is an alert generated by the central, agent protocol machine, and the central manager finds out that this is any mal information, it would properly take the response or query the proper agent protocol machine, and then certain modifications or the intrusion detection system would be triggered in that case. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So finally, I'll come up with to the next point, which talks about a distributed adaptive intrusion detection. It would normally be referred as a hybrid intrusion detection system. So I just now told you that the devices which are there onto my system would vary in certain log formations. So there would be events or information which would be referred as vague for some of the devices and important for some of the devices. Okay, so this concept is normally dealt in case of a hybrid intrusion detection system. So see, uh, I'll zoom in. Okay, so see, on this entire internet or network, you have these systems which are connected. These are your networking nodes. So let's say these are routers. Okay. So whenever we talk about intrusion detection, normally it needs to be collaborative to classify one set of behavior as an attack. तो अगर डॉस हुआ कभी तो डॉस सबके लिए सेम ही रहेगा, ऐसा नहीं होगा कि किसी सिस्टम के लिए डॉस अलग है और किसी सिस्टम के लिए डॉस अलग है. कहीं पर अगर spoofing हुआ, so for every system it would be referred as spoofing. Only for that, but until that client has itself sent in the packet, it would always be referred as spoofing. So the entire concept of hybrid intrusion detection system rotates upon the fact that whenever we are having multiple products into our organization, there will obviously not be a single vendor. There will be multiple vendors depending upon what component they have introduced, depending upon the individual format of the information. So there would be certain security parameters which are there into the routers. Some of the routers may or may not have those security parameters. So if you recall DOS, DDoS depends. We said that there are only few routers who have traceback facility. Okay, so obviously on your entire network, you will have both type of routers. You'll have traceback routers also, you'll have non-traceback routers also. So when the functioning of both of the routers differ, then the information in what way they are processing may also differ. So here the similar concept is used that there can be difference of information formatting or information retrieval also, for classification also. So basically, there are systems which are hybrid intrusion detection system which work collaboratively to classify the entire traffic as a malicious users traffic. Okay, so here there are three types of input, which will help these components to decide whether the action which needs to be taken by the central system has to be preventing that particular traffic or allowing that particular traffic. Okay, so one of the event which is there is referred as summary event. Okay, so what does this summary event will do? It would collect the information from all of these intermediate sources or these intermediate collection points. So what can be the intermediate collection point? You'll have firewalls, you can have IDS, you can have servers which are specifically functioning into your enterprise network, and the activities or the log files collected by them can be used by these summary events, or the events which are collected by them and logged by them will further be summarized by these summary events and delivered it to the system. So this is the central system. Okay. The other event is a DDI event, that is distributed detection and inference event. Okay. So basically these are in the form of alerts. When are these alerts generated? When certain communication happens between them. So here, these devices which are present over here, what would they be doing? They would be communicating the information. So what information? Let's say ये वाला device monitor कर रहा था अपने incoming traffic को. Okay. This device found out that any behavior which is observed and it is an attack. Okay. So what would this do? This would not classify that behavior at the attack at that very moment only. Instead, it would communicate the information to all other clients which are present into the entire network. Okay. So this communication normally happens with the help of a protocol referred as gossip protocol over here. Okay. So what does it say? That your DDI events will generate the alerts which are generated when a gossip traffic enables a platform to conclude that an attack is underway. Okay, so if there are multiple devices or all of these devices, the probability of the devices saying this traffic as an attack is higher, then your DDI events will be triggered. Fine. Third is the PPEP event. Third is PEP event. That is a policy enforcement point. So these are normally referred as those events, and it would be present on the platforms like which have the IDS installed onto it. Okay, this events will help the central system to decide and to classify the behaviors as intrusive behaviors. Okay, so normally we can say that these PEP events will be part of the systems which correlate with the distributed information, help you to decide locally and as well as individually to detect the intrusions, which are obviously not being able to identify at the host level. Clear? Any doubt? So summary events, DDI events, and PEP events, all of these three, which are based upon the data collected by the networking agents or the individual host, will monitor all of these events, will collect this data, send it to the central system, which would further decide based upon the policies that which it has, and it would decide whether the intrusion needs to be considered or it needs to be considered as a normal behavior. Clear? Only one topic is remaining. I'll just briefly discuss it. Okay. So I hope you all are aware of this term honeypots. Still, I'll summarize it. So there can be cases that there is an attack which is directed to this DNS server. Okay. Now, every time you'll not say that all of these IDS will be effective. One case can be that I'll deploy a copy of the network just beside my organization. So that is why it is referred as your honeypots are the decoy systems which are fabricated, filled with the fabricated information. So if I have a copy of the server present over here, and whatever traffic is directed to this to this server, I'll not direct it directly to here. Instead, what can I do? I can direct it to the copied site. Since your copied site doesn't have the actual data, so whatever traffic was sent or whatever attack was sent to your destination will not affect the actual information. Okay, so this entire thing is summarizing that. So initially, when the systems were created, you were only having one single system. So for one single system, you'll obviously have to create one more single system, that is a honeypot. Now that was very easy to do, but now the organizations have increased and there are multiple processing units which are part of your system. So let's say this is the case. So this is the entire scenario of having the organization. In that case, what you need to do, if you develop the decoy system for each of the sites which can possibly be attacked, you'll obviously have to introduce multiple decoy sites. So here, if I want, I can have a honeypot placed at this location. The other honeypot can be placed at two location, and the third honeypot can be placed over here. So first honeypot does the same role which the NIDS sensor 2 was doing, that it is monitoring the open internet, finding out if the attack traffic which is originated is a spurious traffic. So it would only be directed to this. It would not be forwarded. Clear? When it is found that the traffic which is originated belongs to an authorized user, it would send it through the firewall and allow it to access these site and this site. Similarly, if it is allowed and it is surpassed by the honeypot one, possibly there can be other attack scenarios which can be handled by the honeypots placed at location 2 and at location 3. Clear? I've only summarized it in a very small detail, small context. The details can be explored from the attached reference, which I've already given it to you. And here as well, with the slides, you have the information associated with what content is there into a particular slide. You can go through it and clear out your doubts. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in next class. Clear? So
Yes, ma'am.
you have already given your minor for minor one and minor two for your network management system. I guess on Saturday, 28th, or if okay, I'll take it on 27th. You'll have your major examination. Your major examination would cover all of the details which have been included from the first class, including this, and I'll cover two more topics up till then. And your major examination would be either on 27 and or on 28. Okay. Similarly, you'll have your major examination for your lab as well. तो अगर 27th को ये हो गया आपका तो 28th को लैब का ले लूंगी मैं. There are few students who have not yet joined the class for lab. So I'm warning you guys, please join it. Otherwise, it would be very tough for you to pass into the course. Also, you have not submitted the assignment. Please be very specific in submitting the assignment, and you need to submit it on time. What?
Ma'am, we have 20 on 28 Patnaik sir minor test.
Can we have it on 29 then? Or if it is 29, I'll notify you. Whatever, I'll decide it on 26 itself and notify you. But you start preparing. Okay, because I have to take the exams for other courses as well. I'll notify you. I don't have any problem in taking it on 20th. You do not have your major for the other electives? Okay. Okay. You will preparing, and all of those who have not yet done with the lab course, please start it. Okay. Any other doubt? Okay, then I'll see you on Tuesday.
Thank you.